Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. This is Ramirez Unraveled, episode 11, the JFK Files. And I have two incredibly special guests on the episode today, my friends Mark and Donna Byrne. Mark, take a moment and introduce yourself, and I want you to talk about Absurd Productions, and the same with you, Miss Donna.
My name's Mark Byrne. I'm the founder of Absurd Productions Pictures. We've been in business for over 20 years, and we don't specialize in one genre like most independent filmmakers. Most independent filmmakers, particularly in this area, just focus on horror. We also know some filmmakers that just do dramas and comedies. We do all the above because I think you have to maintain an interest level. I think that's one of the keys for a filmmaker is you have to be interested in what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And so if you can do the same thing over and over and maintain interest, then God bless you. I can't. I have to have something different to make me interested enough to pursue all the work that's involved in getting a film done. So that's one of the reasons that we do all the different genres, just to keep things fresh. It's also, I think it also helps your audience is you may have people that don't like R-rated things, so sometimes we'll do a PG thing, or people that like comedy, and that kind of gets underserved in indie film. So I think it's a good thing in that respect. But honestly, I think the most important thing for us is just that we maintain that level of interest from the beginning of the film to the other. I've been in projects where it was pretty clear that the people had lost interest in their project and they're already thinking about the next one. You don't ever want to do that because your actors will catch on to that pretty quick.
Yeah, almost definitely. Donna, same question to you. Introduce yourself and say a few things about Absurd Productions.
Okay, I'm Donna Byrne, and I got involved with Absurd Productions in 2003. That's when we met. We met at a gallery in D.C. at Mocha Gallery, where I was an artist, and Mark was showing some films, and he was looking for some people to be in a black and white film noir that he was working on. So he talked to me about that, and we met and went over the script and everything. And one thing he did not know was that I had a history in production. I had worked in broadcasting, and so I'd shot. I had been a sound engineer at NPR, and then I had also worked at a public access production company in Montana at the university called Montanans for Quality Television. Anyhow, so that was a plus. So we started working together. So I was acting and also doing production as well. And we've been doing that for over 20 years now.
20 years. Wow. That's pretty incredible. When I first reached out to Mark about coming on to the show, he was like, yeah, I'm real excited. That would be kind of cool, but what are we going to talk about? So I had thrown some softball things, and then I started rolling around in my head. And what kind of triggered this was the talk I saw Trump was on Rogan, and he talked about this whole idea of releasing the JFK Files. So I thought, well, let's revisit the 1991 Oliver Stone film as filmmakers, right? Mm-hmm. The whole term conspiracy theorist comes from whether you accept it or didn't accept, the Warren Commission report. So I thought that would be a lot of fun. I think it's an incredible film. I think the cast itself was, a conversation worth having. Oh, yeah. So we're going to do our art dedication, and then we're going to take a look at some trailers from Absurd Production, talk about some of the productions that you guys are working, some of the things that you have going on out there. And then I think we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive on the whole JFK thing, and we'll use the Oliver Stone film as the foundation. So the first thing I wanted to bring up is this first still image for a show that's going on in Frederick, Maryland. This is Noma Gallery, which is located on the corner of 5th and Market Street in Frederick, Maryland. I'm an original 1998 founding member of the Blue Elephant Art Center, which is part of Noma Gallery. It's a beautiful space. It's been the hub of Frederick City art since 1998, but I do believe the building is going to be closed next year. It's been purchased, And I think this amazing art center is going to be turned into apartments or something like that. So while there's still an opportunity for people not familiar with this amazing art space, I'm going to encourage everyone to go and take a look at Remembers. This is the NOMA Alumni Invitational. Brian Slagle on the flyer is also an original member of the Blue Elephant Art Center. This show runs through December, and I know Noma Gallery is also on Facebook and also online. So right across the street from Noma Gallery is the Artist Gallery. So let's pull up the next image we got. They have a Christmas art show going on at the Artist Gallery, which is located on the corner of 5th and Market Street, right across the street from Noma. So it's a win-win. If you go, most of the time the galleries are open on at the same time. It's a beautiful space. Both of them artist cooperatives, so they have a lot of artists involved with it. And let's go to our next image. They also have a call for a local artist. Details are available on their webpage, the Artist Gallery in Frederick, Maryland. I encourage all our artists who watch this show to go out there and get your work exhibited. They have a great curator on this. And again, this is in Frederick, Maryland. And then the last image we have associated with our art plug, a portrait of myself with Rhonda Smith. There we go. This is Rhonda Smith. She just retired from teaching at Shepherd University. I had her when she first started teaching there. She was an art professor of mine back in the 80s. She's still a working artist. I don't do art anymore. I was once a serious artist, but I don't do it so much anymore. But Rhonda, she is known by many and still very active in the Artist Gallery in Frederick, Maryland. So that's our art dedication, and that brings us up to our literary dedication. And every episode I've made a habit of recommending a book. And this one was a little bit tough. I almost went with Oswald's Tale, which is a biography of Oswald, the guy that shoots Kennedy. But instead I picked my favorite Norman Mailer book, The Executioner Song. Can you bring that graphic up there, Nick? I read this. It's one of the longest books I've ever read. But, oh, man, I got to meet Norman Mailer once, right? And I didn't know who he was. It made me go back and read him, but he is, for me, my favorite writer of all time, right? Wow. His books spoke to me. I loved The Executioner Song. I thought it was an incredible book. Naked and the Dead, I thought that was fantastic, as well as Tough Guys Don't Dance. All right, so this brings us on to our first trailer from Absurd Productions. And Mark, do you want to set this up before we take a look at it? This is the Blood and Breakfast trailer, and you both say something about the film.
Yeah, the film is a horror whodunit, so we kind of combined some of the tropes from the mystery whodunits, but in a horror vein. So there's the things the horror audience expects, like some gore, and in a mystery you may have all the killings offset. They're not important. It's more the drama of it. But in horror, obviously, you want the killings to be right there. So they kind of went together. We found a historic inn in Waynesboro, PA called what's the name?
The Amberson,
the Amberson
House.
House. Sorry. And we shot there. We went up there, and we were scouting for a place. And it had to be a certain, we didn't know what we wanted, but we knew it when we walked in there. It's like, okay, this is what we've been looking for. And so it leaned perfectly for what we wanted, as everybody was kind of trapped there and someone was taking them out.
Donna, what would you like to say about the trailer before we...
Yeah, I was going to mention that too, that, the great thing is that they're stuck at this, bed and breakfast, and they can't get out, and they know there's a killer, and it's among themselves, and they're all talking among themselves, and they don't know who it is. and the audience doesn't know who it is, which is different from a lot of horror films. You know who it is. You're watching that person go around, and you know they're going to kill the next person. This, that was the fun part about it, is the not knowing, who did it. And it was great too to be able to shoot. We shot at a really nice bed and breakfast in Pennsylvania, so that was fun. Yeah, and we got to have an opening at a theater in Waynesboro.
I love that theater. I went over Matt. I know Matt does a lot there, but they were screening An American Werewolf in London.
Okay.
And I couldn't resist. It's one of my all-time favorite films, and just the opportunity to see it on a big screen is, for me, that's what cinema is, the big screen.
Oh yeah.
Let's take a look at the trailer.
This serial killer, it's not you, is it?
How about a room at a vintage bed and breakfast?
The police radio puts in near you.
Close enough. There aren't many accommodations open around here in the winter. This place is one of the few.
I get the feeling he's not hiding, but moving as we do.
The guy next to you, passing for normal in society.
We're on hold till we get the word from McSorley. He's working from the inside, but I can't get through to him.
Oh my god!
I was close to being killed by a serial killer.
What are the odds of a serial killer getting you or me?
Well, I think all the strangers are here.
Locked in a house with a deranged psycho.
Wow. So how long does it take to make a film like that? Let's talk about that process with Blood and Prefix.
I would say about a year. This one went pretty smooth. The big thing is how many locations do you have? Because if you've got a lot of locations, say you've got a location where you got 2 actors and what's a minute on the film, but if you've got to drive 2 hours out to the specific location to shoot that 1 minute scene, which may be very important, there's a whole day.
Right.
Whereas if you've got this one location, and we shot there a couple times, but we had all the actors there, and we could really bang stuff out, so we could really move quickly. And then I edited as I went, which is always the goal. Sometimes you can't do that just because of if you're too busy shooting, sometimes you just can't keep up. But we would shoot, and then we'd have a gap, and I could catch up. And so that really put us ahead. Any time that I can edit as we go, we're always going to be ahead of schedule. If I have to wait for some reason, that really is one of the biggest slowdowns, and then of course the multiple locations is also a big issue. How big your cast is,
right?
Let
me ask Donna, how do you guys determine which project you will or won't get involved with? Because I'm sure you guys are getting approached with a lot of things that this may be viable, this isn't viable.
Well, actually, that doesn't happen to us because Mark writes all the scripts.
Okay.
So we'll talk about, upcoming ideas and genres and stuff like that. And and we've never actually had anybody send a script to us and say, hey, do you guys want to produce this or anything like that? Right. So because of that. But I was also going to say about this was fun, too, is that we had met Mike Carroll, who is a composer. We met him in Cleveland at the Indie Gathering for independent filmmakers, and he wrote most of the music for there's some other pieces of music, but he wrote the intros and the overall music for it. So it was really fun to have that for this. The first time we had somebody come and write all the music.
Yeah, that is.
For the film, and we showed him a rough cut, and he wrote to that.
One of the first person that comes to mind is it's John Carpenter, right? Because Carpenter had a lot to do with writing the music.
Yeah.
That's used, especially in his early films. I think he's credited with the whole Escape from New York theme and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's pretty amazing to be able to work with a composer like that.
And we've got him for the future too. So
yeah, that's awesome. Let me ask, Mark, your involvement with Matt, how you guys got involved with each other, how you guys became friends, and let's talk about working with Matt.
Well, it's interesting. Matt, just like Marvin Kennedy, who we also know, we met both of them through Conrad Brooks being on set for some of his films. He did a series called the Gypsy Vampire series. He did 5 of them. This was in the early to mid 90s, I want to say. Maybe I think his last movie was 96, 97, somewhere in there. Anyway, Matt was in that last movie, and Matt was just a kid then. I mean, we met him, and there were some different things happen on that movie, and Matt kind of got out of the business. He got more into promoting music and went down that. So we didn't see Matt for years. And then one day we were at a show, and Scal walks up to our table. We had a table that was up at the Amazicon and outside of Philly. Scal walks up to the table and goes, "I bet you don't recognize me." And I recognized his voice right away. I said, "I know your voice." And I was like, "Were you in one of the Conrad movies?" I'm like, "Wait a minute, it's Matt." But because he had a beard and he gained some weight and he was taller, he's just to look totally different. So
grown up.
So we just kind of linked right back in, because at the time we were shooting a movie called what was the comedy that we did before Bigfoot?
Was it the
game
show?
dating
one? Yeah,
Mismatch. So we were shooting a movie called Mismatch, and he said, "Were you working on anything now?" I said, "Yeah, I'm working on something now, but I'd rather have you for Bigfoot. I mean, if you want to do both." And he was like, "Well, I'll do both." And I was like, "Okay." So I gave him a role, ironically enough, as the conspirity theorist in Mismatch.
That's funny.
What Mismatch was it was like the opposite of your typical game show where they put, or your reality show where they put the people together that are going to work. So in this, they put 2 people together. So you put the conspiracy theorist together with, somebody that's just totally believes the narrative.
Sorority girl.
Yeah, exactly. The sorority girl. I think, in fact, that's who they did. And then in other cases, you'd have like a cheapskate. You put them with the rich person, or the workaholic. You put with, you'd put all these combinations of people that would never work, and on purpose, So Matt had fun with that role. And then when we did Bigfoot, I told him I wanted him to be the lead, because he had never, at that time, and he had never been a lead in a movie. I was like, "Well, Matt, I know, I've seen you work. I know you can handle this. So I want you to be the lead." And the other thing was, that was the last film we worked with Marvin on, so that was special too for that movie.
Yeah. I loved Marvin very much. I went and visited with him. We did a couple of interviews towards the end of his life that we have in our archive. Really active with our whole local scene for the longest time.
Oh yeah,
I knew him from 1989. I still like to go and see the Helgermites for the same reason, because of his connection to the Helgermites.
Yeah.
Donna, let's talk about Matt Burns with you. What's it like working with Matt?
Well, Matt's great. Matt is such an outgoing person, and he's got such a great personality, and he connects with a lot of people, and knows a lot of people. But I think it's his personality. He's really good at connecting, and he sees it. Like, he can meet somebody, and I think things are going on in his head that he's not saying, like, "Oh, that person would be good as this, and that person would be good." He kind of knows how to put people in things. So he's great at that, and great at all the things he does for us. So he's just a huge asset, and he's just really a lot of fun to work with.
I love his laugh. I think he's got a great laugh. Let's take a look at our next trailer, and this is Brazen Impact, and then we'll talk about it after.
Okay.
When you're staring down the barrel of another dead man's gun, you got no time to make excuses or turn around to
about that one.
Well, this was a project that had been percolating for years, and things kept getting in the way of it. I know initially I was wanted to shoot a couple scenes out in California and a couple actors out there, and that's really what held it up. Is I kept. It was just too much money for what we were getting. Once again, you're getting 2 minutes that probably only matters to me, and no one else is going to care, and we're holding up the movie. So finally, I lost both of the things that we were doing out there. Just, let's drop that one. We'll hold this one, and then finally, let's just drop them both. We'll shoot it all on the East Coast, and then it opened up. Then we could move on it. And I had, in the past, the first feature film that we ever did was Taste of Desperation, a black and white noir. But we'd never done a color crime film. So, and that's my favorite genre, probably. So I was like, this is a big hole in our lineup. And that's kind of, you talked earlier about how do we pick a project. In a lot of ways, just look at where's the hole. Where's something that we like that we want to maybe have more of. And so this was an easy choice for that. And then once again, we talked about how hard is a film to shoot, like, Blood and Breakfast versus this one. This one had a lot more locations, a lot more actors. And it was more like Taste of Desperation, where we would spend 5 hours driving, 1 hour shooting, and that's your day. But if you want that location, there's a waterfall that we used in here that made this phone call so much more interesting than having the guy sitting in a room in a house. And we just wanted to break out of that.
No, I understand.
So
that.
it was totally a work of love, I would say.
Donna, I want to ask one to plug to everyone. If people want to see your films, to see the Absurd Productions, how are they accessible right now?
Well, they're on. We have them on a lot of channels, and a lot of Roku channels.
Can you see that chord's right here? Is that good? Yeah, I think. Okay. Thank you. Sorry. No problem.
Okay. We have them on a lot of Roku channels. Mark's actually, he's listed a lot of these. He's probably got them in, I don't have them in my head, but he has them in his head because we've got them on 10 channels and different variations of things to see. I will say that you can go to the website, to Absurd Productions Pictures.com, and you can look at trailers. You can click on a trailer and look at the trailer. And if you want to see more, it lists where the films, which Roku channels. But why don't you list a couple of them? Some of them.
Well, like for Brazen Impact, it's on Plex, it's on Cineverse, it's on Fawsome. It was at one time on 8 channels. I think we're at 8 or 10 channels. I'm sorry. I think we're at 8 now. Some channels will keep it for a couple years, and then after a couple years they move on. Other channels will keep it forever.
When you guys are able to get them on channels like that, does it generate a little bit of revenue?
Yeah,
a little bit. I mean, yeah. I know. My film, I made my film, Trailer Trash, a Film Journal, which is on YouTube. Our first cut, our award-winning cut, was $1,500. Like, that was out of pocket, right?
Yeah.
Most of that was like Super 8 film, and then we picked up on digital video. I've never had money to make film. I think that's one of the reasons that, I've probably only made one film, right?
Right.
Is I know I've met filmmakers that sink outrageous amounts of money into their film and will never recover that,
We talk about that all the time because I think when a lot of people start, they have this. They think they're going to Cannes,
right?
They're going to Sundance,
right?
And they're gonna make all this money. They're gonna quit their job and they make all this money. And our goal was never to make. Well, maybe in the first one it was to make a movie. Right. When we made Taste of Desperation, that was the goal, to make that. We can't think beyond that because we've got to get one in the can. But since then, don't think in terms of just one movie. We've got several movies we want to make. So if you spend all that money on one, you may never make another one. Because and I know several filmmakers that spent all their money on one, and it didn't go. They didn't get their money back, and so they got out of the business. Just once again because and this whole raising money thing is a new thing. I mean, back when all of us started, there was nothing like that.
Right.
You might be lucky enough to have family members that would give you some money or something like that, but. There was no going out and raising money. And I still find it amazing that people contribute. It's great that they do.
Yeah. The crowdfunding.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that people contribute to that. It's just, crowdfund things that we've always done has been helping somebody because their house burned down or their kids in the hospital or something like that. But obviously there's film companies out there making thousands of dollars off of generosity of people, which is still amazing to me that people would do that.
Agreed. And, you know, most of my experiences with, you know, no budget filmmakers, and you fall in love with that, right? You fall in love with the filmmakers' passions, the artists who are involved with their passions. And I've been fortunate enough, like, you know, when we were talking earlier, I knew Todd Phillips long before he was ever famous. The director did Joker. At the time, he was promoting a film festival, I think it was 1995, in New York City, called the New York Underground Film and Video Festival. It was hugely popular, and he had this documentary on G.G. Allen. It was called Hated, G.G. Allen and the Murder Junkies. And that was the first time I'd ever been introduced to him, and I followed his career. I have a rejection letter from that film festival, and I've kept it all these years. It was my all-time. He signed it. He signed it, right? So, awesome. my rejection letter. Let's take a look. We've got one more trailer from you guys that we want to take a look at. And before we do this, I wanted to mention, we'll go ahead and play this, and then remind me, I want to talk about Colleen Titt.
Okay.
Colleen's in this.
Yeah, yeah.
An act of violence, struggle, a tragic death, they can leave an imprint in a space. And trigger sensitivities that allow certain people an ability to see remnants of the past. Ghost, spirit, nothing more than a memory, an image trapped in time, trapped in a realm not its own.
You gonna see the college student?
We imagine they'd be upset.
I don't need an exorcist.
Your mother's dead.
The portal between our world and the world of the remnants. The clown killer, Kilroy, is coming back. He's probably here already.
They're upset, we're upset. Best thing to do is to pass them over, back to their own realm.
Colleen, she's in that one.
Mm-hmm.
She's in. Was she down in the basement when you were filming?
No, she. So what Colleen was you know, the premise of the story is that spirits are not here on their own. They're held here by someone that's alive. So someone's guilt, you know, I wish I'd have told that person goodbye, or I wish we hadn't had that argument before they died in a car wreck. You know, things like that are holding people. And also that a space, like if someone was killed in this chair, certain people would come in the room and not know anything, and other people would feel that energy. They might even see the person that was killed, or the killer, or the killing happen. And so the concept of this was, there's a group of people that got together, some people with money got these particular people together who could see these spirits, and the objective was to send them over to the other side. We're going to talk them into sending them over. And Colleen played a spirit, but she was a good spirit. So she was being held here too, but she was here to help people. She wasn't here to attack people or anything like that. The clown and some of the other characters in it were the violent ones, but she was the good spirit. And she was able to figure out who was keeping her here, and she was pretty smart in it. It was an interesting character for her. Colleen was so good, and we had her in Bigfoot. She was actually a last-minute fill-in there, and she was just so natural. and believable that we got to give her a bigger part. So this was the next film, and we gave her that part of the, the good witch, if you will,
Right.
which required a certain personality, and she was perfect at it.
Yeah, I think she has a great presence. She's also in Brazen Impact
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Playing
And
a very different character in that one.
yeah, she's sinister, a bad person in that, or
Yeah, well, she's more
villainous.
Yeah, kind of. She works for the bad guys. She's more of just a party girl, and she just kind of pretends I don't know what's going on, but she does, but she doesn't care. She gets to party, so
she's an operative for them.
Yeah.
They can send her out to do a lot of things, and she looks very innocent.
Yeah. And she loved that. It was, I'd like to give actors different parts if we can, not always have them play the villain, not always play the good guy,
Right. And you guys, you have a pretty large community of people that are involved with that. Let's talk about some of the personalities you guys enjoy working with Absurd Productions, and then we'll get into our topics.
Oh, sure. Well, in just to pick a few names that people may have heard, in Brazen Impact, we got to work with Sharon Smith, who played Sarah, Barnabas Collins' little sister in Dark Shadows.
Wow.
And so, we may end up being her last film. She hasn't done one since.
Wow.
But it was super cool to get to work with her. That was that worked out. It was an amazing thing. And then we worked with Ellen Udy, who was in My Bloody Valentine. She was also in Brazen Impact. And in the new one, Blood and Breakfast, Nancy Ann Ritter is someone that we had worked with before. She had a small part in One of One, and then we brought her on as the lead in Blood and Breakfast. But we also got to work with Beatrice Bupley from the Freddy Krueger series, and Lisa Neild, who's been in a lot of independent things, not any one thing that I can name, but she was a Playboy model at one point. And she was a lot of fun. Got to work with her. I'm naming the famous people, but we'll let Donna name the more local people.
Well, I was going to say also with Nancy to mention that she was in Scream.
Right.
Yeah. And so Jim Crut.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know Jim.
Yeah, Jim.
Yeah.
Jim was from Dawn of the Dead, and he was a star of
Helicopter
Remnants.
Zombie.
Yeah.
And George Stover, who was in the Don Dohler films, if you're familiar with Don Dohler. Yeah. So
Alien Factor and those things out of it. Yeah. So anyway, George, the first time we worked with him was in Remnants. We wanted to get him in Bigfoot, but it was just too far from where he lived, and we didn't have any scenes up in Baltimore for that one. So it was like, well, we're not going to get him then. But then we were able to get him in Remnants, and later in Brazen Impact, he had a large part. But I hesitate to name local people, because if I name one and I don't name another, then
I'll help you name a few.
Okay.
Of course, a friend of the show is Catherine Andrea, right?
Absolutely.
Who we had her on one of the very early episodes. I think she might even be episode 3 or 4. I think she's episode 3 or 4.
we saw that episode.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
Yeah.
I loved her. I thought she did really. I love what she does. I think she has this, incredible personality, and the determination, and to just see someone living the life,
Yeah.
She's out there. This is what I want to do. I want to be an actress. I want to make it in the industry, and whatever experiences I have with that, I'm going to embrace them,
Yeah.
She's wonderful to have in conversation, and I think she's a really good actress. We used clips of her from Divorce Court, and it was,
the one with the sweater.
It was a blast.
Well, to be honest, when we saw the first time we'd seen this series was when she was on it, and we liked it so much that we reached out to you about,
cool,
that we really, she was very informed, and I told Donna, we got to do our homework, because Catherine knew her stuff.
Oh yeah, she was great. And my favorite thing she brought up was Bob Lazar and the hookers, and I'd forgot about that. There was this sex scandal that they tried to throw at Bob Lazar that none of it made any sense, but she had stumbled on that, so I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. All right, so that brings us to our conspiracy theory part of this. I thought we would talk about the JFK assassination. So the first story I wanted to tell you guys and share with you is let's take we're gonna do it. This is Johnny Harris, right? After this, there's a still image I want to tell a story on. We used Johnny Harris once before on the episode with Yvonne Jenkins. I think this guy has a great channel. I hope you guys both enjoyed this one on the JFK, and I definitely encourage you to look at other ones. Fairly short, like usually less than 30 minutes. He uses a lot of archival footage in his pieces, which I really love. And he has a fascinating backstory. So he's a really, I love his channel. We're going to take a look. This is the foundation of the JFK conspiracy. We're going to look about, 2 minutes of this or so?
So the Warren Commission files its report with the official story of what happened. But soon after they do so, members of the Warren Commission themselves come out and say, like, they don't actually believe the story that the Warren Commission just put out. Especially when it comes to the key assertion that one bullet was responsible for causing 7 wounds.
I could not convince myself that the same bullet struck Wilson. You mean that you yourself weren't convinced about the single bullet theory? No, I wasn't convinced.
Governor Connolly, the one who was sitting in front of JFK, and the one who was supposedly shot by that one single bullet, he disagreed with the story.
I understand there's some question in the minds of the experts about whether or not we could both have been hit with the same bullet. I just don't happen to believe that.
Even the new president, LBJ, wasn't totally convinced. I mean, he was kind of secretive about it, but he eventually did come out and tell a reporter from The Atlantic that he thought that this was a conspiracy, that it was Cuba retaliating against the US for all of these CIA attempts to assassinate their leader. This was not good for the Warren Commission and their story. Then, 12 years after the assassination, this full uncut version of a strip of film that shows the assassination of JFK, it finally airs on national TV.
It's the film shot by the Dallas dress manufacturer Abraham Zapruder, and it's the execution of President Kennedy.
This was the first time that Americans could see solid visual evidence of this event. But why hadn't it been released earlier? To some, this film contradicted the official account from the Warren Commission. And it sparked this new demand for real answers from a government that kept behaving like it was hiding something. All of this is coinciding with a time in American history where Americans are losing faith in the federal government. You just see this massive, nosedive. All of the CIA's covert operations are starting to come to light. The country is mired in this endless war in Vietnam. The president's people were just found spying on their political opponents in a hotel in DC. The government has not earned our trust at this point. So people are like, it wouldn't be a far stretch that the government was also behind the assassination of JFK.
You can go ahead and bring that down.
This was furthered by...
That's the core. That's the core of this. So when I first broached the subject of doing the JFK, what was your thoughts? What runs through your head? I'll share mine real quick. For me, I got a couple connections, but my grandmother was obsessed with John Kennedy. Like that, to the end of her life, she kept memorabilia from his election. She paid attention to what happened and to the Kennedy family. She was Catholic, so that had a lot to do with it. But I definitely grew up with the Kennedys as part of my consciousness.
Well, it's interesting. After doing some research for this, I'd always thought that Oswald was the first shooter, that he was part of it, and then there was another. I always thought there was a second shooter, and this just... Clearly, there had to be a second shooter. I mean, right. I don't know how anybody can argue that. But now, I'm not so sure that Oswald was even the first shooter.
Right.
And then the part in the movie where they put the gun and the whole setup and him going down and getting a Coke on the second floor or whatever when he should have been going out the door if he did it. He was just too casual about, I don't buy it. And they said he wasn't that great of a shot anyway.
Right.
That was a hard shot to make, a moving vehicle. And I know that there was that place in the turn where somebody did make a shot. But yeah, I just don't buy that. I now believe, I've changed my opinion. I don't believe he was the first shooter. I don't believe he was part of the shooting.
I agree with you there. I don't agree. I agree with you. I don't believe he was actually part of the shooting. I believe he was a patsy. Donna, what was your thought when Mark said, "Hey, you want to do something on JFK?"
Well, I was thinking about different, is there anything new, or could we come up with anything or see anything new? Not that I did in my research or anything, but I did, there's some different things that I found interesting. Like, it struck me about, I was interested in knowing more about Oswald and his background and stuff like that. And there was, they were saying, well, he didn't know any Russian, and like they were trying to dispute the idea that he could have been a CIA operative. Now, it doesn't mean he was an employee of the CIA, but he certainly could have been a contractor or whatever, that they could have contracted him to use him as a patsy.
Right.
But it was interesting as I listened to this. There was an interview by this guy. His name's Paul Gregory, I believe. Paul Gregory. He at the Hoover Institute. He wrote The Oswalds, the book about Lee Harvey and his wife. And he knew them, and his family knew them. They hung out with them in Dallas, and they were part of the Dallas Russians, and and stuff like that. And he was talking about how Lee Harvey went to his father, and his father, who was a known Russian scholar, probably, I guess, for better words, or just very fluent or whatever. And he tested him, and he knew Russian, and he conversed with everybody and all these other Russians in Russian. So I felt like there were things about him that they tried to say weren't true about him, so that to say that he was just this crazy guy.
Right.
And I think that's not true.
No, I agree with you. Let's go ahead and bring up the next still. I want to share this story with you both and with the audience. This book, JFK and Vietnam, Oliver Stone finances the publishing of this book. I got to meet John Newman. I had an amazing literature professor when I was in college. His name was Dr. Steve Badridge. He was a Vietnam vet, had done 2 tours, a brilliant mind, incredible writer, and really turned me on to Norman Mailer. I met Mailer because of Dr. Badridge. But he needed a photographer because he went and he interviewed this guy, John Newman, about the book being published and his connection. John Newman actually has a part in the film. He carries a top secret file that, you get to see his face and stuff like that. But he was an Army officer, and he was working on his PhD, and that was the beginning of declassification. So he had gotten all of these new CIA documents that had only recently been declassified, that he was able to put together a very accurate picture that Kennedy planned on pulling out of Vietnam, right? Which becomes one of the motives that's discussed in the Oliver Stone film. So the first thing that we're going to look at from the Oliver Stone film, this is 1991. This is the original theatrical trailer.
Who you scared of, Dave?
Me?
Who you scared of, Dave?
Me? I'm afraid of everybody. Ow! Get off! Everybody. Agency, mob, Cubans.
You just talk to us on the record. We'll protect you. I guarantee it.
It was a day that changed our lives.
I saw a flash of light in the bushes, and that last shot.
An act that shocked a nation.
The smoke came from behind the hedge.
A moment when time stood still.
It seemed like people weren't even breathing, like you were looking at a picture.
For one man, it became an obsession with truth.
You're the DA in New Orleans. Don't you think the Kennedy assassination's a little bit out of your domain?
A commitment to justice.
Nobody's gonna tell me that kid did the shooting job he did from that damn bookstore.
A sacrifice of everything he had.
I think you care more about John Kennedy than your own family.
For everything he believed.
Nothing is gonna keep me from going ahead with my investigation of John Kennedy's murder.
They tried to stop him from asking who.
If I give you the name of the big enchilada, you know. Do I have to spell it out for you, Mr. Garrison? Then it's Bon Voyage Dino.
They tried to keep him from asking why.
That's a real question, isn't it? Why?
The government's gonna jump all over your head, Jimbo.
Why was Kennedy killed?
By the same people that killed us, Pop.
Nobody's gonna kill us.
Who benefited?
You have any idea what you're getting yourself into, Daddy-O?
Who has the power to cover it up?
Warner Brothers presents Kevin Costner.
Now we're through the looking glass here, people.
In an Oliver Stone film.
White is black, and black is white.
People got to know.
I'm a dead man! I say let justice be done though the heavens fall.
Oliver Stone, what a fucking badass. God damn, I love Oliver
That's
Stone.
the way to make a trailer, isn't it?
And I mean, to start with, what an incredible cast, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I gotta say, Oliver Stone is one of my favorite filmmakers. Natural Born Killers always been one of my, you know.
Yeah.
I thought this was an incredible film. I think it's one of his longest films too. It's like almost 3 hours long. I saw it when it first came out, and I've seen it a few times since then, but then I revisited for this conversation. So your first take on the film itself.
Well, I'd forgotten how detailed it was. I'd forgotten all these people in it.
Yeah,
you know?
what a cast.
I mean, it was just, and a lot of them were uncredited at the beginning. They were all in the end, but we were like, that's so-and-so. He wasn't in the credits.
John Candy.
So yeah. And what a great, what a great cast, and just the analysis of it, and it was very. There were, once again, nothing was presented that I went, oh, you forget that. That's not possible.
Right.
Everything was presented in such a good way. And I do think it's a movie for everybody out there in the audience. If you watched it 30 years ago, like many of us did, you need to rewatch it, because you're not going to, you remember the analysis of the bullet went here, a lot of it because of the Seinfeld thing. We all remember that part of it, but there's so much more to it than that.
Yeah.
And then I gained a lot of respect for Garrison himself.
Yes.
And we watched several interviews with him, and the guy just would not, watching all these other people get killed, you'd think he'd put the poker down, but no, he was going to keep grabbing it.
Yeah.
He wanted to know the truth, and he was willing to risk his own life. So it's amazing.
Yeah, agreed. Donna?
Is that Martin Sheen narrating?
I was about to put that out there as a yes. I was going to put that as a test question, filmmaker test question. It was Martin Sheen there.
That's so funny.
That would be great if it was. I bet it was.
It was Martin Sheen.
It was.
It's Martin Sheen, most definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. Go ahead, Donna.
So I think, of course, there's all these different things and all these different angles and stuff to think about. But I was really struck by Donald Sutherland.
Yeah,
I mean that because that was
clip of him.
So such a powerful but short and just kind of breezed over point that he had, that Kennedy getting killed just so that the Vietnam War could go on, so that the military industrial complex could make lots of money making helicopters and weapons and stuff like that. So I think that's a interesting point.
Yeah, I agree. Let's take a look at our next clip. All of these are from the film. I figured we'd discuss them, and I tried to
Zapruder film establishes 3 shots in 5.6 seconds. Zapruder film establishes 3 shots in 5.6 seconds. Here. I'm Oswald. Time me.
Go.
Time.
I like when he gets into the whole turkey shoot. I gotta ask, were you guys fans of the X Files? You guys watch X Files?
I would say I was a fan of it, but I didn't watch it because I was afraid if I start watching it, I'll be locked into it.
Oh, I'm obsessed X Files fan always. Loved the show, watched it religiously, have seen it, binge watched it. One of my favorite, like the smoking man, the bad guy, he was supposed to be the one that shot Kennedy. They show him in one scene where he's supposed to be down in like some sewer grate and he shoots. It's strange how it's and we'll close with the discussion on the Seinfeld, but it's really sunk into pop culture. You know, it's part of pop culture. Let's take a look at the next clip, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the cast. I picked out one scene I thought was a really strong scene. This has got Kevin Bacon in it. I love. Yeah, you can go ahead and bring that down. Let's talk about the cast for a little bit because it is an exceptional cast. I was looking for a good clip of Sissy Spacek, but unfortunately I couldn't really find one, but that was one. I love Sissy Spacek. I thought she was incredible. So when we look at the cast, throw out some of your favorite names from it, both of you guys.
Well, we're both big fans of John Candy, and we both noticed him. We recognized his voice, and we saw his mouth. And is that John Candy? And then when they showed his face, of course, we knew it was him. And then Walter Matthau popped up.
Yeah. I was thinking,
and then, of course, she already mentioned Donald Pleasance, who had, Donald Sutherland, who had a huge part. But
Joe Pesci.
Oh, right.
You gotta love him.
And Jack Lemmon.
Jack Lemmon in that. Yeah. And all of the performances, even with Bacon, all of them are thinking, I'm going for the Academy in this one. Oliver's going for the Academy, and so am I.
Yeah.
The production value in this film is really top notch.
Yeah, and think about what a difficult. We were talking about what a difficult film to make.
Yeah,
I mean that's incredibly difficult. You know, people don't think of Oliver Stone as much today. But in the '90s, he was top of the heap. I mean, like you said, Natural Born Killers still is one of the
best
most creative
movies
ever created.
Right.
I mean, and then
the
could
Doors.
also
The Doors.
Yeah, I'd totally forgotten about that one. And of course, the one about Vietnam he did that kind of blew up.
Platoon.
And then he did one about South America. That was an early one he did with. Trying to think of the actors.
Is it James Woods?
James Woods was the actor.
Oh,
Salvador.
right.
Salvador.
Yeah.
So he embraced the conspiracy theory before anybody. I mean, we may have not even had the word, at that point.
Yeah. Donna, your thought on the cast? You said Pesci, right?
Yeah.
To me, Pesci is a titan. An incredible actor. First film that always pops into my mind is Raging Bull. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, Casino, the stuff that he does with Martin Scorsese. I love Pesci.
That's funny. The one that always pops into my mind is My Cousin Vinny.
My Cousin Vinny, yeah. Oh, yeah. He's hilarious in that. Also, Tommy Lee Jones in this.
I would not have recognized him if I did not know it was him. Mark figured it out. I would not have recognized him.
And Kevin Bacon's performance right there. I mean, that's an amazing performance.
Yes.
Everything that he's doing, from the shirt being open to seducing the audience, I mean, it's just an amazing performance.
And he's flirting with the warden.
Right, and the guards. Yeah. Let's take a look at our next coup. This is the one with Donald Sutherland, and we'll talk the same about Sutherland at the end of this clip. This is coup d'etat.
He wanted to call out the moon race in favor of cooperation with the Soviets. He signed a treaty with the Soviets to ban nuclear testing. He refused to invade Cuba in 1962, and he set out to withdraw from Vietnam. But all of that ended on the 22nd of November, 1963. As early as 1961, they knew Kennedy was not going to go to war in Southeast Asia. Like Caesar, he is surrounded by enemies and something's underway. But it has no face. Yet everybody in the loop knows.
You can forget about your combat troops. He told McNamara he is going to pull out the goddamned advisors. He fucked us in Laos, and now he is going to fuck us in goddamn...
All right. So, for me, when we talk about Oliver Stone, there was a clear politics, right? And his politics come from his experience as a Vietnam veteran. Mm-hmm. When we talk about this generation with JFK and with that whole generation, you're talking about World War II veterans, right?
Right.
So, with this whole one, you see this split between this idealism of the future we want with America and this, we need to stay the course with the Cold War. I mean, that's essentially what I'm getting from that as the conspiracy against. And I love the scene with Donald Pleasance, because the whole thing of putting it to I want to say Shakespeare, the Julius Caesar, right? Like it too brute.
Yeah.
This is something that we've experienced through our collective history, the assassination of political leaders.
Yeah, I mean, they wanted to assassinate Hitler, the generals, because they knew they couldn't win with Hitler.
Valkyrie, that's the film Valkyrie with Tom Cruise.
Yeah, and I remember we grew up, we learned that Rommel died in battle.
Right.
It wasn't until 20 years later that we found out that he took poison to save his family.
Right. Because he's implicated in a plot to kill Adolf Hitler.
Yeah. So, it's definitely, and think about all the things we don't know about.
Yeah.
And I worked with a guy who, who's a historian, and I'd be in there in the morning, half asleep, drinking my coffee, where he'd tell me why William McKinley got killed. He loved that I liked history, and he could just recite out of it. The reason I bring it up is he had an unfounded conspiracy theory that I talked to Donna about, and I did some research on it, and there's no finding in this, but I'll tell you what it was. His theory was that Jack Ruby was the second shooter. And then that's why Ruby went to kill Oswald, because then he was the only one left, and he was going to die anyway. I don't buy that. I don't buy that he had the experience to be the shooter. I think it was a sharpshooter that we'll never know.
I'm glad that you mentioned Jack Ruby. In our last episode, which was called The CIA LSD and Charles Manson, we find out Charles Manson's psychiatrist, Charles Manson's connection to this free clinic in the Haight-Ashbury is none other than Jack Ruby's psychiatrist that sees Ruby after the Kennedy assassination. Kennedy is perfectly normal until he sees this psychiatrist. And from there on out, Ruby's nuts.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, this guy is he's the guy who is MK Ultra, right? This ultra top secret CIA program of mind control, right? Begins in 1952. It's supposedly closed down sometime in the 70s, exposed in 74 by Seymour Hersh. But to actually see these connections through this, that like, you're kidding me, that in any way that MK Ultra could be connected to the Kennedy assassination, and then it's just there, you know.
So you mean this guy is the one who they'll send people to him if they need them to be discredited?
Well, he's a head psychiatrist. He was at the time in the late 60s and the 70s considered the greatest psychiatrist of his generation. He's a deep undercover CIA guy. He starts his military career with the CIA, early experiments with the LSD. He is MK Ultra through and through. His name is, and I learned this because of the last episode. I've always been fascinated with MK Ultra. His name is Dr. Jolly West. And later he's fucking testifying in the whole Patty Hearst thing too, right? He just shows up in all of these, incredibly bizarre stories of the 20th century, and none other than Dr. West is right there. That's crazy. Yeah. So when I found out, and we played that in the last episode because I knew we were doing this.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, that's just so bizarre. But again, Donna, your thoughts on the whole coup d'etat? What would be the motivation to kill Kennedy?
Well, I think the one that I was not most interested in, but struck with was when Donald Sutherland's talking about for the Vietnam War, because they wanted to get into the war. And then all these guys are talking about how, it's going to screw them all over because of all the, weapons makers and the helicopters, all the people who profit, from war. So I think to me, that's a very, very stronger than other theories of why they killed him.
I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah. That one makes complete and total sense, right? That he doesn't want to escalate in Vietnam, but others do.
Yeah, they didn't care who won.
He wanted to shut it down.
Right, he wanted to
completely shut it down, yeah.
They didn't care who won, whether it was Johnson or Nixon, because both of them expanded.
Right.
So they're like, we're going to win either. Of course, they didn't want Bobby either.
Right.
But other than Bobby, everybody else is going to expand it. So
when we talk about JFK, you can't help but think about the RFK assassination, which doesn't happen that much longer. Again, very much like this whole idea of mind control with Sirhan. Sirhan, he claims not to have even remembered doing it. In an earlier episode that we did with Yvonne Jenkins, we discussed a CIA program called Operation Chaos that leads to the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and several of the leaders of the Black Panthers Party. And it's not hard to believe that all of these things are connected, that we need, or not we, but, there were nefarious forces that wanted to direct the course of history.
Yeah, and a couple more interesting movies. Bobby, the movie Bobby, was done by Emilio Estevez, was the director. Really good movie. Puts you in, and we don't know as much about the RFK assassination. We just haven't heard as much. That's if anybody's interested, it's a really good movie. And then there was a movie called Ruby. Danny Aiello played Jack Ruby, and if we'd had more time, I would have rewatched that because it's been years since I've seen it. But that kind of went into his history. All of these movies are great. It'd kind of be great to go back and watch them all. You could I'll watch them every 10 years because there's so much to them. You can't remember all those facts.
No.
And they're just fascinating, and all of those kind of put you there. All three of those movies kind of put you in the middle of it. Like you're, wow, this is how did anybody believe this story? That's what I don't understand.
Right. Yeah.
Especially the magic bullet.
Yeah.
Right.
How did anybody believe that?
Right.
Yeah, and I think when that other piece of footage came out, where it was pretty clear that he was shot from a different angle.
Yeah.
How does anybody buy it then? It's
Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit further. Let's take a look. This is our last clip from the movie, and then we're gonna close with a discussion on the magic bullet. We're gonna look at a couple of clips. So this is the end of Garrison's speech.
The most important value we have, because if the truth does not endure, if the government murders truth, if we cannot respect the hearts of these people, then this is not the country in which I was born in, and it's certainly not the country that I want to die in. Tennyson wrote, "Authority forgets a dying king." This was never more true than for John F. Kennedy, whose murder was probably one of the most terrible moments. Nothing as long as you live will ever be more important. It's up to you.
I always remembered that the most from the film, that where he looks at the audience and it's up to you.
Yeah.
You know? I find myself, we're in a difficult position as a culture and a society. Some of the conversations of the 21st century are strange and alien to me, right? I'm trying very much to understand and, to be able to listen to them. I believe in politics. I've always believed in politics. And having filmmakers like Oliver Stone and other figures like that, it helps. I think it helps to give context. It helps to give an expression through cinema. And it does it speaks about cinema's ability to put forth a message, you know. So your take on where we are today, after all of this, when we discuss something like the government secretly killing its presidents?
I think now we lean, like back then, obviously, we leaned in on, okay, they must be telling the truth. Now I think it's the opposite. Now it's like, okay, they must be lying.
Lying, yeah.
And I think both extremes are wrong because there's somewhere in the middle. But, how can you fall for that? I mean, okay, they played up that he had this Russian background and he said, I don't want to be an American citizen anymore and all that. I can understand why you could say, okay, well, I can see his motivation. But then if you really thought about the angles and the location and all that, this guy, is he a sniper in Vietnam or in World War II? If he was, okay, I'd believe it.
Right.
That's what kind of person that could do that. And even those people couldn't do it.
Right.
And so unless you just didn't know that evidence, I don't know how. I think people were more trusting in the government then than they are today, and there's no question about it. They were.
Donna?
Well, I would like to think that in the current, not current government, but just most recent government that we've had for many, many years, that there was a lot more checks and balances, that this could not ever happen again. But now I kind of think something like this could happen again. And it's not just killing a president, but just doing terrible things that people can't stop, or the Congress doesn't stop, or
I think we've lost, and if you disagree, feel free. But in some ways, I look and I think we've lost or are losing those checks and balances.
Definitely.
I've ranted at other points on what I call a uniparty, that there's just one party, and I think it's FDR. He says the difference between a Democrat and a Republican is 15 cents, and that's nearly 100 years ago. But I do look at, I have concerns with the direction that a uniparty moves, I have a lot of different concerns politically, but this isn't the forum to really, discuss them.
Right.
But when we look at subjects like this, like the conspiracy theory kind of things like that, that's, it's why it's easier to have those conversations, right? I don't trust our government. Nick and I were just talking yesterday about some of the strange things during COVID that made no sense, So then you hear today they're talking about blanket pardons, right? Like pre-pardon. Wait, don't you have to commit a crime to get a pardon first, right? Don't you have to be accused of a crime?
Pre-pardon?
I want a pre-pardon. I'll take a
pre-pardon.
pre-pardon, yeah. And then I'm going to go rob a bank. But let's close.
Hey, we'll come with you now.
I want 3 pardons, please.
Yeah. It's the opposite of future crime, right?
Oh, that's funny. All right, let's take a look. We're going to watch a minute or two. This is the magic bullet as done in the Oliver Stone film.
I forgot it was Newman.
Wound number 4. The bullet then turns right and re-enters Conley's body at his right wrist. Wound number 5. Shattering the radius bone, the bullet then exits Conley's wrist. Wound number 6. Makes a dramatic U-turn and buries itself into Conley's left thigh. Wound number 7, from which it...
Manson episode, we also talked a little bit about, I think, how do you say his name that wrote the book? How do you say the guy that wrote that Manson book? Leo Bush. The guy that wrote the Manson book. God, I can't remember the prosecutor's name.
Not Helter Skelter.
Yeah, who wrote Helter Skelter. I had the book.
I can't remember who wrote it.
It's an Italian name,
Yeah.
but he also wrote a whole book on the magic bullet. He spent 20 years, like saying it was right. It was,
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Bugliosi. Bugliosi. I can't remember what episode to another. So then we're gonna. This is pop culture at its finest. This is Seinfeld.
I hate Keith Hernandez. Hate him.
Hello, Newman.
I hate Keith Hernandez. Hate him.
I despise him. Why? I'll tell you why.
Now, let me tell it.
No, you can't tell it.
You always tell it.
All right, tell it.
You just tell it.
June 14th, 1987. Mets, Phillies were enjoying a beautiful afternoon in the right field stands when a crucial Hernandez error opens the door to a 5-run Phillies ninth, cost the Mets the game.
Our day was ruined. There was a lot of people, they're waiting by the players' parking lot. Now, we're coming down the ramp. Newman was in front of me. Hernandez was coming toward us. As he passes us, Newman turns and says, "Nice game, pretty boy." Hernandez continued past us up the ramp.
Then, a second later, something happened that changed us in a very deep and profound way from that day forward.
What was it?
He spit on us. And I screamed out, "I'm it!"
Then I turned and the spit ricocheted off him and it hit me.
Wow. What a story.
Unfortunately, the immutable laws of physics contradict the whole premise of your account. Allow me to reconstruct this, if I may, for Miss Bennis, as I've heard this story a number of times. Newman, Kramer, if you'll indulge me. According to your story, Hernandez passes you and starts walking up the ramp.
Mm-hmm.
Then you say you were struck on the right temple. The spit then proceeds to ricochet off the temple, striking Newman between the 3rd and the 4th rib. The spit then came off the rib, made a right turn, hitting Newman in the right wrist, causing him to drop his baseball cap. The spit then splashed off the wrist, pauses in midair, mind you, makes a left turn, and lands on Newman's left thigh. That is one magic loogie.
Well, that's the way it happened.
What happened to your head when you got hit?
Well, my head went back to the left.
Say that again.
Back and to the left.
Back and to the left. Back and to the left.
So, what are you saying?
I'm saying that the spit could not have come from behind. That there had to have been a second spitter. Behind the bushes on the gravelly road. If the spitter was behind you as you claim, that would have caused your head to pitch forward.
So the spit could have only come from the front and to the right.
But that's not what they would have you believe.
I'm leaving. Jerry's a nut.
Wait. The sad thing is, we may never know the real truth.
There you go.
That's funny.
It's, to see the whole magic bullet seeped into our pop culture.
Yeah.
And the same actor.
Yeah.
As in the movie and in Seinfeld.
Same I said last night, I'm an idiot. I didn't realize it was the same guy until I was playing it back. I did the Seinfeld first, and then I took a look at the one from the movie. I was like, oh, shit, it's Newman. So,
when they reenacted the part when we were watching JFK again, it was like, well, I didn't remember Newman in the movie, and then he was sitting in the same position being Connolly. So it was such an amazing parody. Anyway, and then the fact that he was in both made it even better,
Yeah. This has been a blast. I want you guys to take a few minutes and plug Absurd Productions. Anything that you guys have going on, anything that you would want the audience to know about.
Yeah. So why don't we start with, we'll start with this one. This is Blood and Breakfast. This is the one that we debuted in Waynesboro. We have a showing in February. I believe it's February 28th in Winchester at the Alamo.
Okay.
We have another screening in April up in Baltimore. And then we've got one that we haven't publicly, we have one in North Carolina we haven't publicly announced yet. We have another potential one in Pittsburgh that we haven't publicly announced. We will do that. There's on the website, there's Absurd Production Pictures, there's a thing that says current events. If you click that, that's where we'll list the upcoming screenings for this film. And I'm going to let Donna talk to this other one that we have going.
All right. And we have this up on the website, and do we have it up on Roku yet?
No, it's not available yet.
Okay. So this is Clark Fox, Dragonfly on the Wall. Oops. And it's about a New York artist who was New York and DC, and he was a pop artist. And so it's a documentary about him and his work. And he was interesting. He grew up actually in the Washington area, and he was gallery mates with David Lynch.
Oh, cool.
And he went to school with Jim Morrison. They all went to the same high school together, whatever. But anyhow, so then he went off and became an artist, and he also hung out with Warhol and that group up in New York and stuff. And so this is about him and his life, and he does a lot of pop art.
Another thing with, if you guys are familiar with the movie Crumb.
Oh yeah,
one of the
Crumb.
things I loved about that was Zweigoff, the director, and Crumb were friends.
Right.
So most of your art documentaries, not that they're all bad, but they're more stodgy, and it's usually somebody giving you a professorial dissertation on why you should like this artist. The thing I liked about Crumb was it was a conversation. That's why the tagline is conversation, not dissertation. So we're friends with Clark. So we could just sit down and let Clark tell a story.
Right.
It wasn't somebody interviewing, looking for gotcha questions or trying to prove some point to, it was just, we just basically opened the door for Clark to talk. And Clark could talk for an hour and you wouldn't be bored for a minute. He's just a very interesting storyteller, and he has such a history of knowing all these people and running across all these people. It's just crazy.
And he's just been a really good friend of ours for a long time. And he's been he's in Brazen Impact. He's in several of our films as well. And so it was nice. That's a very good point, that it was different than us just walking in there with cameras and everything and being interviewers, that we really knew him.
And we started, there's a sister company to Absurd Productions Pictures. It's One Life, One Earth Productions, which is our documentary. And Absurd Productions is 100% fiction. We don't do anything nonfiction. One Life, One Earth is 100% nonfiction. So that's where we can do documentaries about artists, or if we want to delve into like food safety or some other pet issues that we have. We may or may not do that down the road, but that's open for that. And we really want to limit it to that. We're not looking to do documentaries about something outside of that. And so we have another one that we interviewed Conrad Brooks, who before he passed away. And Conrad Brooks was actually at D.W. Griffin's funeral. And when he told that story, I was like, somebody's got to capture that.
Right. He was in all the Ed Wood films.
Yeah, and he met so many people. He met, Frank Sinatra. He met Stan Laurel. He met Boris Karloff. He worked with Bella and Vincent Price. So we did a documentary on that. It's a shorter one. It's not available right now, but it's called Conrad Brooks Recollects. It's just him basically telling stories about some of the different people that he met over the years in Hollywood. We would like to put that out on One Life, One Earth down the road and have that available for streaming.
So I just want to mention one little tidbit of interest of people who knew who Ed Wood was, a filmmaker. That Mark, among other things, being a filmmaker, but he has one thing else in common, that Ed Wood put his chiropractor in the film, and our chiropractor, Mark, put our chiropractor in the film. He's in Brazen Impact.
Yeah.
With Ed Wood, I loved the film, the black and white film by with Johnny Depp. And what's that filmmaker's name that made that?
Oh, it was he's the one that did
Conrad's in that.
Beetlejuice.
Yes, he is.
What is his name? We just saw
Tim Burton.
Tim Burton.
Yeah.
Oh, my mind. I hate that. Yeah, Tim Burton. I usually liked most of his films.
Me too.
But that was my favorite of his, was the Ed Wood's film. I thought it was his strongest.
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah, he's another one that's really imaginative. Him and Terry Gilliam are the two people. Their imagination. Yeah. As a creative person, you strive to be that creative, and no one is. I mean, Gilliam, his worst idea is more creative than 90% of our best ideas. I mean,
Brazil, Terry Gilliam is awesome.
But those two guys are just the two that are, to me, are just, their creativity just has no bounds.
I forgot the actor's name in this, but he's one of the investigators with Garrison. He's also Merle in The Walking Dead. His brother is Daryl from The Walking Dead. But anyway, he starred in this movie called Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
I went to see that in New York City in 1988. Like, you could only see it in New York and in Chicago because it was so controversial, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Supposedly it was based on the life of Henry Lee Lucas, but that was the first time I experienced that actor, and I thought he would stay underground. I didn't really expect him to become a mainstream actor. But right after that, he stars in Tom Cruise. He's with Tom Cruise in Days of Thunder. He's a race car driver. And ever since then, he's been a mainstream actor. But he's a top-notch actor. And again, I thought that cast from the Oliver Stone film is incredible. You guys mentioned Walter Matthau. I think, unfortunately, most people don't know who he is. We were fortunate enough to be,
of the age.
And he was, once again, everybody thinks of him as a comedian, but he did several serious roles where he could do anything.
Same with John Candy. And
Yeah.
the one thing in this film with John Candy that stood out was he smoked while he ate. I've only, in that whole scene where he's out having lunch with, he's smoking and he's eating.
Yeah.
I've only met 2 other human beings that did that, like I knew that was a thing, and I met these 2 people that when you went to dinner with them, they smoked through the whole dinner, which just blew my fucking mind.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, I thought it was disgusting personally. I mean,
well,
it's totally irrelevant.
You can feed them anything, and they're not going to taste it.
Yeah. And the girlfriend at the time, her name was Nature. She was trying to prepare me. She was like, look, they're going to smoke while we eat. I was like, oh, okay. But this has been really a blast. I appreciate it, you guys. If that's it, nothing else?
I don't think so. I mean, I'll just, one final plug.
Do plug 101, that one of one.
Okay, I'll do.
We brought that for you.
This was
cool.
Yeah, and you don't have this one. So there's Catherine.
Yes,
we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So this was our film we did last year in 2023, I believe. Yeah. And it's a dark comedy. And once again, I looked at our listing and said, well, we really need Bigfoot was a comedy, but that's a horror comedy. Not everybody likes horror. Not everybody likes horror comedy. So let's just do a straight up comedy. Mm-hmm. And it's also got some stoner elements in it. But it's a dark comedy, and it's about a contest where this rich guy is trying to get ideas for a writer's team, and so he forces everybody to bring an item. He also has everything in the world, so you have to bring something he doesn't have or an invention of something.
And tell a story.
Yeah, and then there's a story behind it, and part of the thing is shouldn't the story be first? But it never is.
Right,
And
right.
it's a play on Hollywood with movies. It's like, oh, is there supposed to be a story? Well, we got Tom Cruise. What does it matter?
Right.
You know, so it's like the story is the last thing this guy cares about. It's like, oh, you brought me this, you know.
Catherine's one of the main people in this.
Yeah.
With Sylvester Stallone in the movie where he's climbing in the mountains, he's half naked climbing in all the Arctic mountains, but they said he just constantly kept rewriting the script as they went along, you know, like that was always something supposedly with Stallone that, you know, he would just throw away whatever script they had.
Yeah, and you know, they said Orson used to do that. They'd wake up in the morning and Orson had rewritten everything. I'll tell you what, I love Orson. He's my favorite director, but I would never do that. That's not fair to your cast. Now, I know sometimes you have to make a change. You know, we didn't shoot that scene, so we can't reference, or we changed it to outside, so we can't say inside. So sometimes you have to change a word or two to reference what you've already shot. But when you're rewriting the whole thing the night before, why didn't you rewrite it months ago? Once I give it to the cast, I'm done with it unless we go as we're shooting and we're like, oh no, we didn't have that person. We're going to have to later on take that reference out because they weren't here, so we can't say they did it. Say this person said it or whatever, you know. But what I was going to say before we got to one of one was absurdproductionspictures.com is our website, and that's the best place to go to find where our movies are because I try to put where they are on there, and you can just click directly in to get to it. The other place is Absurd Productions Pictures Facebook page, which is a public page. All you guys can get on there. And we put current events on there. So when we're shooting, we'll put the link for this on there. And when we're shooting a movie, we'll put pictures from the shoot and all that. We don't put that on the website. The website's more of a history. This is what we've done.
And where to find the film.
Yeah. And Facebook is more what we're doing currently. And every now and then we'll reach back, but usually it's today and forward.
Let me ask, you know, we're getting ready to bring this out, but as filmmakers, some of your favorite filmmakers, names. Like
Orson and Stanley Kubrick are probably my two favorites.
I was expecting Kubrick.
I'm a huge fan of Scorsese and the Coen brothers.
Yeah.
And in the 90s, if you'd asked me this 20 years ago, I probably would have said Oliver Stone because Natural Born Killers was just an amazing movie when it came out.
Yeah.
Did I leave anybody out?
We have a lot of
I like Tarantino. You know,
me too.
I'm a fan of Tarantino. And then all of the all of the noir guys. The guy from Germany,
Fritz Lang.
Fritz Lang. His noirs are great. Yeah, I just any noir movie almost.
We watch Turner Classic Movies
Noir
Alley every Sunday.
Yeah, it comes on 10 a.m. on Sunday.
And the guy talks about the film before it goes in. Eddie Muller talks about it, and
I once, you know, I would pay attention to the Academy Awards, Best Director, Best Films. I'd go out of my way to see those kind of things.
Yep.
When I was younger, not so much now. Like now, I couldn't even begin to tell you. I'm loosely familiar with, I think his name is Villadune or something, the guy that did the new Dunes. I saw the first Dune, and I saw the Blade Runner. I think he's the director of the second Blade Runner film.
Okay.
The one where Harrison Ford is an older man.
Yeah.
And I loved the original Blade Runner.
Oh, yeah. Ridley Scott was...
Ridley Scott
back
is
then,
badass, too.
Yeah,
he's up there, too. He belongs in the canon, too. For me, him and that whole Alien thing, right? The original Alien is his. And then I liked the revisit he did with Alien Covenant. You know, I think when a filmmaker that helps pioneer a franchise, he gets to revisit it 30 years later or something like that. But Ridley Scott, he's definitely one of my favorites too. I've always thought he was a great filmmaker, and Kubrick as well. Stanley's up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you believe he helped fake the moon thing?
I don't know about that. I mean, you know, some of these conspiracy theories are fun to run down. Like my thing with Ruby, I was hoping that was true, and I would have looked on the internet, and I was like, no, nobody's buying this. So, but some of these things are fun. That's fun to think about, but I don't think I think he would have wanted to be totally in charge. I don't see him letting the government tell him what to do. I just don't see that.
And I don't think he could have kept it quiet, you know, not at all.
Speaking of conspiracies, I have a question for you. Have you done Bigfoot?
We did a little episode on, we called it Cryptids of West Virginia, but we really haven't gotten into the Bigfoot thing. We used in the cryptids, and it was with Nick's son, we used a clip of the Patterson film.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
So
yeah,
we used the
yeah.
Patterson
Yeah.
film on that.
Well, if you want to. Interested in having us back for that. That
do
would be
the
fun, 'cause
Bigfoots?
we did a Bigfoot
Big
movie.
film. I know my friend Christopher Loomiser's in it.
That's
Yes.
right. That's right.
We have Bigfoot costumes.
Okay, we could. We'll have you guys back, and we'll do a big one on.
Yeah.
Bigfoot.
Yeah. Maybe wait till then we have something to promote a new.
Yeah,
our
that'd be
our next film, and that would be
Yeah.
that would be a fun one to do.
And I've definitely set feelers out. I'd love to have Colleen on. We're going to invite Catherine Andrea back. She's talking to a couple of actresses. So, don't hesitate to send anyone our way.
Cool.
We
Absolutely.
would love to have some of your friends on. They
Yeah.
got something to promote. We'll get them on.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds
Yeah.
good.
Thank
This
you
has been
guys.
great.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Bring us out, Nick.